What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Stocks channel. My name is Cory, and today the market was closed, but I missed stocks and I missed you, so here I am. Today we're going to do a special look at the S&P 500 index, which is the SPX. We'll also look at the NASDAQ 100 index, which is the NDX, and then we'll also take a look at Bitcoin. So first up, let's take a look at the S&P 500 SPX index. So let's crack open this chart and see what's going on in the stock market today. Alright, so this is a chart of the SPX, and this is a weekly chart, so every single candlestick does represent one entire week's worth of price action. So we see with last week that we had another bullish week in the market, and we did close at a brand new all-time high. One thing I like to look at when we do these updates is to look at the price action and the trend. We see the price action is still trading over the 5 EMA, and we still see a strong bullish trend. We can also see that that 20 simple moving average is now crossing through both of those trend lines, which means that we're definitely picking up into a secular bull market, because if you remember, these trend lines did call the market top for many years before we finally did crack through that trend line, and now we've been trading above that trend line ever since. So it's very likely, if we do see any selling, that those resistance trend lines are now likely going to act as support. So as you can see from the trend line, that gives us support right around the 3650 levels on the SPX. You can also see that I do have my price target on here, which is my price target for the year 2021, and that's up there at 4,040. So from last week's close to my yearly price target, that is about another 2.6% upside before we hit that target. As you can see at this point, we're so close to hitting that level, it's very likely the market is just going to continue to grind higher until we hit that level. So once we get to 4040 on the SPX, I will be much more defensive in this market until I see how the price action reacts around that level. The last thing I want to do is be too deep into the market right before a major sell-off due to a critical top in the market. I'm not saying that has to be a critical top in the market, but it's definitely a level that I want to pay attention to and I want to get more defensive around. Remember, in bull markets, we're going to always be forming new all-time highs, so you really don't want to try to short or try to call a market top, but it's definitely a level that I do want to pay close attention to. Now, if we do start to see any selling and we do come back down to that trend line and or the 20 simple moving average, that's about a 7.5% drop on the SPX. So there is definitely significant downside if we do start to see selling, especially from that higher level. That will be a deeper drawback. But then again, there's no guarantee that we have to see this sell-off. So just remember, with the price action bullish and the trend bullish, we want to remain bullish and we want to remain in this market. There's no reason to sell out of the stock market and be 100% cash just because it's going higher. In bull markets, you will get left behind because the market generally goes way too far, way too fast, and then it will consolidate and cool off. So you don't want to miss out on these big runs in the market because they're few and far between, and missing one giant run like this can really set you back. You could see on the Bollinger Bands that we still have plenty of room to the upside, and we're not overextended and we're not trading outside the upper Bollinger Band. So there's no reason that we even have to retrace from these current levels. If we do see any amount of selling, it could also be contained above the 5 EMA like we saw back here on this run, where the price action stayed above the 5 EMA and we never actually got a price action close below that level the entire run. Here we did close below the 5 EMA, but it was just a fake out, and you saw how quickly we got all of those gains back in the market. So on the SPX, pay close attention to that 4040 level, and if we do start to see selling, really watch this 3650 level down here, because that should be a very strong support. Now, another thing I like to look at with these updates is the BearBull Survey, and we can definitely see that there's a lot more bulls in this week's survey. So remember, this is normally a contrary indicator, meaning you want to go the opposite of the trend. So the more people we see bullish on this survey, the more defensive and the more neutral we want to get. So right now, we definitely see a reduction in bears and an increase in bulls, and the closer we get to that SPX level of 4040 means the more likely we're probably going to see even more people bullish on this market, which means we could be nearing a temporary top where we need to see some selling to reset the retail sentiment back to bearish and neutral. So pay attention to this survey as well, because the more people we see turning into bulls, the more bearish or the more neutral we want to get on the market. Okay, so next up, let's take a look at the NASDAQ 100 index, which is the NDX. And again, this is a weekly chart, so every single candlestick is one entire week's worth of price action. We can also see on the NASDAQ 100 that we had a bullish week last week, and we also closed above the 5 EMA with a strong bull trend. You can see we have very little room to the upper Bollinger Bands, but those Bollinger Bands will expand tomorrow. As the market opens up, we will see an expansion in those bands, and my price target on the NDX is up here at 14,488. And that is an increase of about 4.8% to the upside. Now to the downside, we could go back to that 20 simple moving average, and that's close to a 10% pullback from current levels. So just like I said with the SPX, I do expect to see us hit that level of 4040, and on the NDX, that equates to a level of about 14,488. It's very likely they're going to hit these levels around the same time because the NASDAQ 100 typically outperforms the S&P 500. So there's more upside on the NASDAQ. However, there's likely going to be more downside in a correction as well. Now remember, these levels don't mean that we have to go through a correction, but with the BearBull Survey showing more bulls as we continue to head higher, that means you likely want to get more defensive the more people we see getting bullish on this market. Now don't forget, when we're looking at a weekly chart, you really want to pay attention to where the week closes because the intra-week price action is a lot less significant. As you can see from this bull run, we were above the 5 EMA for the entire time. And even though we had a little bit of a fake out here, just like we saw in the S&P 500, we saw how quickly buyers stepped in and bought up that dip and drove the market higher. So just because we see some selling doesn't mean the market has to crash or that it's going to see any significant amount of correction. So pay attention to these support levels because they've been very critical in this bull market, and they could be a buy the dip opportunity as we continue to head higher towards these price targets. If we get up to these price targets way too fast, we could see a steeper pullback, but if we continue to take the stairs up and slowly climb towards those levels, the price action and the market will be a lot healthier, and there's not necessarily a need for a steep pullback. All right, so next up, I also want to take a look at Bitcoin because it's also been very critical in this market, and we do see Bitcoin looking like it did go a little bit too far too fast a couple weeks ago, and last week we really saw Bitcoin going absolutely nowhere. As you can tell, Bitcoin was outside the upper Bollinger Band, and even though those Bollinger Bands are expanding, it really is just going sideways as it cools off and consolidates this big move that we had a couple weeks ago. So my price target on Bitcoin is up here at 54,752. And you can go ahead and round that up to 55,000 since Bitcoin does like those $5,000 even levels. And it is likely that Bitcoin is also going to hit that price target the same time the SPX and the NDX hit my other price targets. So from Bitcoin's close this week to that price target, that's about 13% upside. Down to the 20 simple moving average is about 46% downside. So it's pretty typical in Bitcoin to see 30 to 50% corrections when the time is finally here. So be aware of these levels because all three of these markets are predicting a very important level coming. Just like I said earlier, that doesn't mean that we have to see a correction when we get to those levels, but they're definitely levels that I want you to pay attention to, and they could be very critical price targets for this year 2021. Normally, the market likes to do everything like a mood swing, and it likes to go way too far, way too fast, and then correct way too much, way too fast, just to come right back up to where it came from. So pay attention to the wild swings in the market and pay attention to these important critical price targets. Remember, these are weekly charts, so these trends take many, many months to develop, and they're not trends that you want to ignore. You can see that all of these markets are incredibly bullish, which means we also want to remain bullish because we want to be on the side of the trend because the trend is our friend. So remember not to get bearish just because the market is going higher. That was not the point of this video. I'm just giving you some very critical price targets that I want you to pay close attention to because we are getting very close to hitting those levels and they could trigger a correction or a sell-off. So I want you to be prepared and I want you to be ready for any possible market condition. So if you haven't already, come check us out at the Stocks Channel Discord. We're a disciplined and profitable trading community and we're absolutely crushing this market. You can find out how to join the Discord server by clicking on the link in the description of this video. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your long weekend. And as always, I will see you in the next episode.